Hey, this isn't the normal way I usually start my videos, but this one's going to require a little bit of explanation. First thing I want to mention is this video is actually from an archery elk hunt in Montana from 2021. So I've had this video for over a year. And there's really two main reasons why I've had it this long and haven't completed it. The first was, as I've mentioned before, I'm a hunter first. I haven't been fortunate enough to really harvest all that many animals with my bow. So if it comes down to getting the shot on film, or missing the shot or the shot opportunity, I'm gonna get the shot opportunity, which may mean I'm not able to film. And that's what happened in this video. I got a couple shot opportunities. I wasn't able to film them. So there's gaps in the video that I need to be able to explain. So I'll jump back in later and I'll provide a little bit of background to be able to tell you what's going on at that point in the video. The second reason why I've had it so long is this is not a video that I really look forward to sharing. I've documented my hunts for almost 2 decades, and when I first started, I journaled my hunts longhand. So every single day, like what time we got up, what the weather was like, where we went, what we saw, what we experienced, what time we got back to camp, every single day. And it was a ton of work. And even when I did do this, it still wasn't a great way to be able to share the experiences with family and friends. And so, I switched to video. It's a much better way to be able to share it. But I didn't do that just, so I could get subscribers or likes. I do it to document the hunt, to be able to relive it, to be able to, again, share it like I said. And so, it doesn't really do it justice if all I do is make videos when it goes well or it's fun or it's exciting. The video, for me, the reason why I do it is the full experience, whether it goes well, whether it goes poorly, whether it's fun, whether it's boring, exciting, whatever that might be, that's why I do it. So ultimately, even though I don't have a lot of content and I'm going to need to explain some things in this video, I felt like the right thing to do, even though it's not one that I am particularly fond of sharing. The right thing to do is to make a video for this part of the hunt, just like I have for everything else. So if you continue to watch, I hope you enjoy. Okay, it's Saturday morning, and I'm supposed to be driving home, but last night was so crazy. We had to come and give it one last try. Last night we had, we counted up to, I think, 9 bulls at one time that were coming in from different directions. I've never seen anything like it. We basically did a cow party because a couple bulls were bugling up private, and we just didn't seem like they were ever going to come over. We tried just regular, cow calls every now and then, and nothing. They just didn't care. They had cows. So kind of as a last resort, we basically had a cow party. And we just started calling, just obnoxious, just nonstop, different calls. for, you know, probably 15 minutes straight. And we got to the corner of public, as close to the private as we could get, and started doing that. And after we'd done it for like I said, like 10 or 15 minutes, we had our first bull running across the clearing that we saw the cows and the herd go across earlier in the day. He just came running out of there and was on his way, and he went into some timber. It was a huge opening that he would have had to cross. He went into some timber and then stayed in there and bugled. But we knew at that point he was coming, or like, you know, we'd piqued their interest. So we got back to our bows and our packs, and we just continued calling, and pretty soon we had we had 5 or 6 bulls that were just screaming their heads off. And this is around, I think, around like 4:30. But they just would not come across that opening. So we worked our way down into another stand of trees, again, as close to the line as we could get, and just kept doing it. And within the next hour or so, we had bulls coming out of the woodwork. I mean, everything from raghorns to big 6-points. They were coming across the opening. We got a raghorn to come across. He was about at 30 yards, and my buddy got a shot and missed again. And then we had multiple other bulls, and so just as the night progressed, like we had cows come up above us. Had cows come in to about 60 yards from me. Again, I can't take that shot yet. Trying to come in and see what the ruckus was all about. I was bugling and raking in the trees and cow calling. Gary was cow calling. And the elk were just like sounding off everywhere. And there were several bulls, like I said, came across. Some of them hung up at, out 60, 70 yards. We didn't have our decoy. But it was epic. I've never seen anything like it. So we had to come back. So now this morning, as soon as we came in again, the elk beat us to the water. We were actually here earlier, way earlier, but the elk beat us to the water. So we snuck in on them, but they had already left. And then we circled all the way up around like we did the day before. We came down on the very same ridge, sat down and started looking out into that opening that we were watching yesterday. We saw the elk, we saw the bears, we saw the deer, and we weren't sitting here, 10 minutes. And, we hadn't even gotten to here. We saw one single bull cross that opening. And then 10 minutes later, after we sat down, we had a cow and a bull come all the way across from the bigger part of the opening to the meadow there. And then shortly after that, then we had a herd of, I didn't count them, but got some video of them, maybe 10 or so. A bull, I think a raghorn, and then quite a few cows, like maybe 8 cows or something. They all came across, and eventually they worked their way through the timber, and then we think over to the water. So we made our way across over to, there's a little kind of valley there, thinking that they might hit water and then head up. We never saw them, so we don't know exactly what they did. They could have gone up a valley, just one over from where we were. They could have gone back into the trees that they came from. We don't know, but it is a good thing. It's about 11, maybe 11:30 now, and elk are out moving. They're not talking like they were yesterday, but they were going so crazy last night that kind of thinking they just slept in this morning, but it looks like they're getting ready to go again. So we're going to wait just a little bit and start making some calls and see if we can get some responses and then figure out where we go from there. But it's a beautiful day. The wind is really crazy. We haven't been able to get steady wind the entire time this morning, but you got to do what you got to do. So keep our fingers crossed. This is for sure the last day. So whatever it is at the end of the evening is what it's going to be. So hopefully we can get them going like we did last night and get another opportunity. Here we go. Okay, so after we took our nap, it was around 12, between 12 and 1 o'clock. We headed over to kind of this rock wall that was up high, kind of had that hill slope down from it, and we were able to see out onto all of this open space where the elk had been moving back and forth the previous day and earlier that day. So we decided to have a cow party, and we just started calling nonstop. And at about the 15-minute mark, Gary leaned over and said, "Jerry, a spike is coming." So the spike was coming from a large stand of timber and across a big open space, probably 500 or 600 yards, across a saddle, and then up to where we were at. So when he dropped down into the saddle, we lost sight of him. We didn't know where he was at, we didn't know when he was going to pop up, and we didn't know where he was going to pop up. So while we were waiting, I dropped down over the rock ledge and set up and was ready to draw, so that we knew when he popped up he was going to be close. And sure enough, he popped up after a few minutes. He popped up and he was about at 30 to 35 yards, but he was running to get to us. And so very quickly he was within 20 yards. And I thought, we were fairly exposed. The wind had been inconsistent all day, so I thought he was going to see us. I thought he was going to smell us. So he stopped for a split second. I thought he saw us, so I thought he was going to stay there for a little bit. So I drew. He went behind a small tree, came out, stopped. I drew, and it was a straight-on frontal shot, under 20 yards, and right when I released, he started moving again. And it all happened very quickly, but he started moving. I probably wasn't as steady as I needed to be on that side hill, but in any case, I missed. But the sound of the shot and the arrow flying by made him drop down below us. And as he was doing that, I still don't think he knew where we were, what we were, but as he dropped down below us, I knocked another arrow, and as he turned broadside, at that point then, I was able to draw, and I released. And I hit him. It was a full pass-through. At that moment in time, I thought it was a solid hit. It was a good hit. But we saw where the arrow passed through. We saw a little bit of blood. And then he started to run across this big open area to our right, and we were able to watch him, and we watched him for the next at least 15 minutes, possibly longer. In that time, he stopped at about 100 to 150 yards out behind a small stand of trees. We were still calling to try to calm him down, and I tried to make another stalk on him to get a second arrow in him. I got to about 60 yards. He winded me and saw me, and he wheeled and then came all the way back across where he had been, back over the fence onto private, and then across the 500 or 600 yards back over to the timber. And that entire time, he didn't show any signs of being hurt whatsoever. And when we talked about it right after that all happened, we all agreed that the shot was a little high. It was probably about 6 inches below the top of the back, most likely right under the backbone in no man's land, too high to hit lungs, and basically just a muscle hit. So I know the elk was going to live. I was still sick about wounding an elk, and about screwing up potentially one of the best opportunities I'd had to shoot an elk in many previous years. At this point, I'd been hunting elk for probably close to 24 seasons. Had gotten very few opportunities in that time, and this was probably one of the best opportunities I'd ever gotten. So we weren't getting any more responses to our calls. We headed back down to a small stand of trees below us. and just waited a couple of hours, and that entire time it just kept running through my head, and I just was beside myself. I couldn't believe that, one, I had wounded an animal, and two, that I had screwed up such a great opportunity. Unfortunately, I didn't know it was going to get worse. So as the evening progressed, and I should back up a little bit, I should say, there's probably could be a discussion about, should I have just notched my tag and called it good and said I was done. In a situation where I had shot an animal and I wasn't able to see really how clearly I had hit it, where I had hit it, I wasn't able to observe the animal afterwards, and I wasn't able to even track or find the animal potentially. So it was a shot, don't know where I hit it, don't know how well I hit it, and can't find anything, wasn't able to see it go, and it just disappears, and I have no idea whether that animal is dead or not. I would have absolutely considered doing that. I felt like in this particular situation I screwed up, I made a mistake, it was a horrible shot, but we could see where I hit it, and we were able to observe it for at least 15 minutes, if not longer. It wasn't showing any signs of distress or any indication that it was going to be any kind of lethal hit. And so at that point, that's the only reason why I felt like it was potentially okay to continue to hunt. One other thing that I want to mention is I went back, after the shot and after the spike ran off, I went back and I ranged the location where I shot from, and the actual distance to where the spike was 25 yards. But with the angle compensation, it was 18 and a half yards. And that's why my shot was as high as it was. I didn't adjust for that. So, multiple mistakes. I should have waited another second to make sure that the elk was going to stay stationary when I tried the frontal shot. And I should have made sure I was comfortable and I was steady, or just not have taken the shot then. And then the second mistake was not adjusting for the change in elevation. It was really pretty steep there. I didn't realize that until after the fact, but again, that's a mistake on my part. So as the evening progressed, we moved back down to the stand of trees. As the evening progressed, we started calling again, and it wasn't very long before, again, across this wide open space, about 600 yards away, we saw a cow come out and start heading towards us. So Keaton didn't have his bow that day. He was just along for the experience. We had told him what the day before was like and how exciting it was, so he just came to experience that. And Gary only wanted to shoot a bull. So when we saw this cow start to come, we knew it was going to be my shot. So I moved down behind a large tree, and that cow made its way all the way across that opening. It took quite a while. She would stop, look, listen. She'd come a little bit further, stop, look, and listen. But eventually, she came right to the tree where I was at. It could not have been worked out any better. So I was already ready. I was on my knee. I was drawn. She came to that tree, and when she got to that tree, she turned perpendicular and started to cut across, and that's when she stepped out in front of me, completely broadside at about 12 yards. So I had that entire time of her crossing that opening to, calm my nerves, control my breathing, think about my shot process, go through the whole thing, and be as ready as I could possibly be calm. So when she stepped out, I put my pin right behind her front shoulder and I released. What I didn't realize is she stopped. When she got past the tree, she stopped and she looked. Either recognized something was there or saw me, but she looked. Well, I thought in that split second she just turned her head and her neck and looked at me, but in reality what happened, and I was able to figure this out after watching the video over and over once I got home, is she didn't just turn and look like this. She turned the whole front part of her body, and when she did, it dropped this shoulder back, and I didn't adjust. I kept my pin right where it was. I didn't realize she had dropped back like that, and I released and hit her in the shoulder. So when I saw the arrow only penetrated by a couple of inches, at that moment I didn't realize what had happened. I was basically in shock. I couldn't believe it. So she took off running then at that point. She ran by Gary and Keaton, continued up to the top of this ridge, and we watched her for another 10 minutes or so as well. She stayed up on the ridge. We were still calling. She looked like she was still trying to figure out where the elk were that she had been coming to. Our decoy was still set up, but we were able to watch and observe her. And you can see in the video, and I'll highlight a couple of areas for you so you can see it. But you know, if I had shot and had my pin in the wrong place and hit her in the shoulder, it would have been coming directly out at a 90 if I had just put my pin in the wrong place. But in fact, when you see in the video, the arrow is actually coming out at an angle almost almost parallel with her neck and head. And that's because, like I mentioned, when she turned the front half of her body to look at me, it dropped that shoulder back and I hit her this way, so it was sticking out. And you can see that in the video. Again, my mistake. I should have adjusted. I should have taken a split second. It was a perfect setup. There was no need for me to rush it. I had an extra second or two for sure. She wasn't going to bust. That was my inexperience, not getting many opportunities with shot opportunities. But I could have taken an extra second, recognized that she dropped her shoulder, adjusted my pin, and then released. I didn't need to have it that close either, which again is another lesson learned. I didn't need to hug the shoulder that tight. It's a big enough target area where I could have backed off, and then even if she did do that, still released and been just fine. But those are all lessons learned, and we watched her, and eventually she went over the horizon and was gone. And I just can't even begin to tell you how sick I was, how disappointed, how frustrated. It was a horrible experience. To know that, not only had I wounded 2 animals in the same day, which was bad enough by itself, but had also screwed up 2 of the best opportunities I had ever had in close to 20 years of hunting elk with the bow. It was really hard. It was a really hard day, and unfortunately the next day I had like a 12-hour drive home to do nothing but think about it the whole way. I think people can say or think whatever they want. They have the right to do that. The reality is nobody's going to be any harder on me than I am on myself. I made mistakes. There's no other way to say it. What I will say is I learned more in that day than probably I had in the previous 10 or 15 years of hunting, simply because we just don't get that many opportunities to actually interact, like shot opportunities to actually interact with real animals in a real life situation, to learn what to do and what not to do. In my opinion, there's only so much you can learn, shooting a target, watching videos, practicing, doing all of those things, being out there hunting and stalking animals and whatnot. Until you get those shot opportunities, you can do everything to be prepared for that, but until you get those opportunities, there are a lot of things that happen in that moment that you're not necessarily able to replicate when you're practicing or trying to do things to get ready for your hunt. So the only silver lining, if there is one, is this year, 2022, I was able to execute a really clean shot and harvest my first elk with a bow. And the only reason I think I was able to do that is because of the lessons that I learned from this hunt. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.